And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and these are 5 cards that I think should see a little more play in the Commander format. Again, these are cards that are not completely unknown or anything like that. They're just cards that I come across through doing my deck techs or deck doctors that I'm like, man, that card should see more play. It seems really, really good, and I don't see it that often. And typically, these cards will fall into 2 categories where it fits really good with a specific strategy or archetype, or it's just one of those cards that you could literally throw it in any deck, and that's the case with number 5 here, Dream Devourer. 1 and a black, Demon Cleric 03. Each non-land card in your hand without Foretell has Foretell. Its Foretell cost is equal to its mana cost, reduced by 2. When you foretell a card, Dream Devourer gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So this card can be a little deceptive, I guess, in that maybe people will look at it and think you want to play it in a foretell strategy. Of course, that's not the case at all. You want the exact opposite here. You don't want it in a foretell strategy because it's giving foretell to all your cards that don't have it. And really that last ability of bumping your Dream Devourer by 2 is, who cares? I mean, you're really not going to play this card for that reason. You're going to play this card for that first ability, which is amazing. I love the foretell ability. I've been a huge fan of it since Kaldheim first came out. Being able to tuck something in exile and cast it at a later time is really, really handy. And then the cost reduction as well. I have a Damnation in my hand. I don't need to cast a board wipe now. There's no creatures on the table, and I might not need to cast a board wipe for a while. So I will stick my Damnation in exile, and then at a later date, when it's time to cast a board wipe, now I can cast it, and also it's only going to cost a black and a black. The cost is going to be reduced as well. Fantastic. That card in exile is face down. Your opponents don't know it's a board wipe. Sometimes with Foretell, your opponents can kind of figure out what the card is because there's only a certain amount of cards that have Foretell in certain colors. But with Dream Devourer, they have no idea what that card is. It could be any card in your deck. And then, of course, the added bonus of Foretell is you get to tuck that card away so that you don't lose it. So if you have a win con, a really important card in your deck that you need to close out the game, it's in your opening hand or early in the game, now you can tuck it away so that your opponent can't make you discard it or wheel it away or whatever, and you can just cast it at your convenience. Again, it's face down, your opponents don't know what it is, and you can cast it whenever you like, even if your Dream Devourer is no longer on the table. This really is a card that could go in just about any deck. Coming in at number 4 is one that is a lot more specific, which is Battletide Alchemist 3 white, Kifkin Cleric 3/4. If a source would deal damage to a player, you may prevent X of that damage, where X is the number of clerics you control. So this ability requires a little bit of explanation. First of all, if a source would deal damage, so that's an important wording there. Of course, it's any source, not just creatures or a lightning bolt to the face. If any source would deal damage to any player, so this applies to any player, not just you, you may prevent the damage. And of course, you're preventing damage equal to the number of clerics you control. Your Battletide Alchemist is a cleric, right? So you're going to, at the very least, always be preventing 1 damage from any source if your Battletide Alchemist is on the battlefield. Now, I know people will look at this and go, okay, well, it goes in a Cleric Tribal deck. This is currently only in 1,395 decks, which means it's not even in all the Cleric Tribal decks, not by a long shot. But on top of that, I think this could go in any deck where even just your commander is a cleric, and there are 40 cleric commanders in white that this guy could go in, because if just Battletide Alchemist and your commander are on the battlefield, that's 2 damage you're going to be preventing from every source, may prevent, of course. So if your opponent has, say, a Perforos deck, you've just completely shut them off, right? A Perforos deck cannot win if you have Battletide Alchemist and your cleric commander on the battlefield, because every time that ability triggers, you're going to be preventing the 2 damage. A Krenko deck is going to have a heck of a time beating you as well, because each of those goblins that they're throwing at you, you're going to be preventing 2 damage. So if they throw 10 goblins at you and they've managed to get a couple Anthem effects on the field, and now they're 3/3 creatures, you will still only be taking 1 damage from each of them, right? Each one is an individual source. And then the added bonus of this card, which I think makes it really, really interesting, it is any player, so you can do this in a politics way as well, where you are able to prevent damage to other players, so you can save some lives and get some favors as well. And I really like that about this card as well. I think it should see a lot more play. Coming in at number 3, Throne of the God Pharaoh. 2 mana legendary artifact. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal equal the number of tapped creatures you control. This card sees a okay or fair amount of play, I guess. I almost never see it in games. It really could go in a lot more decks. Any go wide strategy wants this card. You're going to be attacking anyway, and on your end step, you're just adding a whole bunch more damage, and this is hitting all of your opponents. The most important part of this card is if I have an opponent that say is playing a Pillow Fort effect and I'm in an aggro strategy, now I can get around that, right? I don't have to pay 2 mana for that Ghostly Prison for each creature attacking. I can attack the other opponent, and then on the end step, each of my opponents is going to lose life for each tapped creature I control, and my opponent isn't going to be able to get around that. And getting back to the Battle-Tide Alchemist, this is not damage, so that will not prevent. This is loss of life, and it's really, really difficult to get around that, right? So this is a really great win con, or at least a helper towards your win con if you're in any kind of go-wide strategy. But even if you're not in a go-wide strategy at all, even if I just attack with 2 creatures on every turn, each of my opponents are going to be losing 2 life on my end step. That seems pretty darn good. This card can go in a lot of decks. Coming in at number 2, Fiend the Broker, a card that I've talked about quite a bit on my channel because ever since it first came out in C21, I thought as a commander, there's a bit too much going on here to make it a great commander, even though I did just do this on my Underwhelming Commanders series, so you can check that deck out if you want to. But in the 99, this guy is fantastic. He goes in the 99 of so many decks because he's doing so much. 2 and a black human warlock, 3/3. Tap, sacrifice a creature. Put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature. You can tap him, remove a counter from a creature you control to create a treasure token, or you can tap him to sacrifice an artifact, create a 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. And then on top of all of that, you can also pay 3 and a black to untap him, so you can use some of those abilities again. So we are sacrificing creatures, we're putting +1/+1 counters on creatures, we are removing counters from creatures, we're creating treasure tokens, we're sacrificing artifacts, and we are creating token creatures. There's so much going on here, and this is why this guy should be in the 99 of more decks. I think a lot of times people will sometimes overlook the possibility of putting an actual commander in the 99 of their decks. I know I do it sometimes as well. I actually have a video on this that I did a while back of commanders that I think are actually better in the 99, and of course Fiend was one of them. There is currently 87 commanders in black, of course, that are dealing with tokens, okay? So either creature tokens, artifact tokens, stuff like that. Fiend will probably fit in all of those decks. Even just the treasure tokens, I was actually surprised by this. There are currently 15 commanders in black that are dealing with treasure tokens. I couldn't believe there was that many, actually. So of course, Fiend will fit in all of those decks, right? Because of course he's making treasure tokens, but also sacrificing an artifact means he can sacrifice those treasure tokens to do other things. So any commander that is making any sort of artifact token is great here, or if you're in any black deck that is sacrificing artifacts for whatever reason, he will be great. Because sometimes you can have a lot of those tokens lying around and you want to be using them for other things, so now you convert them into a 2/1 flying inkling token, which you can use to attack or block. Sometimes that can be a lot more valuable. There is 69 commanders that are dealing with +1/+1 counters that are black. That's a lot of commanders, right? That's a lot of decks that this guy can go in, and again, fits that theme for a number of reasons. You're putting counters on creatures, which is great, and also you can remove counters to create treasure tokens. So again, because of the way his abilities play into each other, whatever theme you're sticking this in, he's probably going to have 2 abilities that fit that theme, right? If you're in that +1/+1 counter theme, his first ability will fit that theme, but also his second ability will fit that theme as well. There's a whole bunch of commanders out there where I think this guy is an auto-include. He should be in way more decks. But coming in at number 1, Bow of Nailia, 1 green, legendary enchantment artifact. Attacking creatures you control have death touch, and you can pay 1 and a green and tap. Choose 1. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, or you can have Bow of Nailia deal 2 damage to target creature with flying, or you can gain 3 life, or you can put up to 4 target cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library in any order. I love this card. I try to put it in as many decks as I can. I only have it in 1 currently. It's just one of those cards that is doing so much, and it fits so many themes that you could put it in any deck. Even if it's not fitting the theme of what you're doing, it's doing so much you could put it in any deck. I mean, giving all your attacking creatures Death Touch, that alone is fantastic. So if you're in any sort of an aggro strategy, it's going to be a great fit. But all of those other abilities, and man, just 2 mana and you get to pick one, doesn't even have to be something that you want to do, right? On your opponent's end step, right before your turn, you got 2 mana open, your Bow of Nailia is untapped. You can just say, I'll put a counter on one of my creatures, why not? Or I'll gain 3 life, why not? So these abilities can be really fantastic. You can hit one of your opponent's flying creatures that has a 2 toughness and kill it, or you can tuck those 4 cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library that you really, really want to get back, really important cards in your deck that you need. Or because these abilities are so open-ended, you can always do any of them. You can always gain 3 life. You can probably always put a counter on one of your creatures. But then there are commanders that really, really want this guy as well because it really fits the theme of what they are doing. If you have any commander that is able to search their library in green, this is really, really good, right? Because you can tuck cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library that your commander then can go get again. Of course, any +1/+1 counter theme can fit this guy as well. I don't really like to harp on the fact that, hey, this card could go in any deck, so we should just put it in all our commander decks. I'm not saying that necessarily. I'm not the guy who's saying, hey, put Dream Devourer in all your black decks, put Bow of Nailia in all your green decks. I'm just saying this is a fantastic card that could go in just about any deck. So maybe pick one deck that it can go in, right? For me, I like to take these cards that are just sort of good stuff cards that are just really, really handy and nice to have in a commander game. And I choose my one deck where I think it fits really nicely and I put it in there so that I have an opportunity to play with this card once in a while. I'm not going to put it in all my decks, even though I probably could. But that is it. That is just 5 cards that I think are fantastic commander cards that I don't see nearly enough in the format. If you're thinking of purchasing any of these cards, I do have a TCG player link in the description below. Give it a click. It helps support the channel. But that is it for today. And thanks for tuning in.